Which player is cheating? If you thought to yourself, this has to be a trick question, you most likely wouldn't find yourself alone. However, I can assure you that there is no trick. Let's take a look at our first clip. We're presented with some impressively fast flicks, but this isn't anything out of the ordinary. At first glance, the untrained eye would probably assume this is the work of a high-level aim trainer, like Viscos or Riley CS. But if we were to take things a bit slower... There. Many players, especially those engaged in aim trainers, are subject to microcorrection practice. What we're looking at, however, this abrupt snap. It's more closely resemblant of an artifact within their aim. Using this small element to contextualize the rest of the shots leading up to it should definitely lead to much more suspicion. We could even take note of the magnetism keeping track of the target post-flick. It's completely fair to assume this is a cheater right off the bat, but we should still take a look at player 2, just to keep it safe. Looking at this, two glaring red flags would scream cheater to both novice and experienced players alike. Firstly, let's take a look at the blatant flick at the wall. Before ADSing, we could only see two targets on the screen. What reason could we possibly have had to have flicked at the wall where a player just so happens to be conveniently tucked behind?
As well as flicking based on audio cues is another really big one. I think part of the reason why I think I do better than I don't know, my switching scores would suggest, I suppose, in games when it comes to the skill is being aware of audio cues, how to flick to them based on directionally knowing where they are. And I actually kind of did train that in aim trainers, which most people don't, but I think it actually really helped. And I think, is a super important part of target switching in game that is kind of undertrained right now.
Although a rather underutilized skill, a good handful of experienced and well-trained players incorporate this in their technique on a day-to-day basis. This topic alone could be dedicated to an entire separate video. But we're still left with one more glaring red flag. Just what is this insane flick speed? In order for us to really understand what's going on here, let's dive into the technique required to make clips like this, and this. The technique that lays the foundation of this hyperspeed oriented style of aim, known as a one-frame flick.
So, what exactly is a one-frame flick and how do players pull it off? Here's a regular flick. It starts off with an initial acceleration, with the velocity gradually rising to a maximum speed, then a deceleration. But with the one-frame flick, something strange happens. The usual build-up, that gradual acceleration and deceleration, it's just gone. Instead, it's like the aim jumps from point A to B at a constant speed. No wind up, no wind down, just one sudden razor-sharp motion. When you look at the velocity graph, it's even more confusing. There's no curve, just a straight spike up to max velocity, then instantly back to zero. And all of that happens in just 1 or 2 frames. This should basically be impossible. If you were to attempt to replicate this in the firing range, you'd find that you can't avoid that initial acceleration period before reaching your maximum velocity. So how are these players supposedly breaking the laws of physics? Well, here's the secret. They're not bypassing physics, they're bypassing the sensor. Try moving your cursor across your screen in a straight line. Now, slowly lift the mouse off the table and notice what happens. At some point, your sensor will stop being able to detect the pad and come to a perfect stop, no matter how fast your mouse is moving. By lifting the mouse at the perfect time, we can avoid needing to counteract momentum and skip the deceleration phase of the flicks altogether. And this exact technique is actually used by a lot of really good players. Minigod, Urpa, Baranox, Viscos, and other great target switchers. Not every single flick is a mouse lift, but on really wide and fast movements like 180s, the mouse lift is occasionally the most optimal way to cleanly end a flick. The biggest factor in performing a one frame is to have the mouse sensor only track when the mouse is at or near its max velocity. This can be done by lifting the mouse before the flick, lowering the mouse into the pad, then immediately lifting the mouse back up. In this diagram, the purple area represents the sensor's liftoff distance, the height at which the mouse begins tracking movement and sending that data to your computer. We want that area to come in contact with our mouse pad when we're moving our mouse at its fastest speed. To stop the flick, we want to lift the mouse back up, still moving the mouse at its fastest speed in the horizontal directions. What's left is that hyper clean snap, not because of cheats, but because you've removed everything that makes it human. There's some things to note that can improve the speed of your flicks. First thing is that the name one frame flick is kind of a misnomer. Many factors affect the look and feel of the flick, like monitor hertz, game FPS, and video FPS. Looking at a lot of these one frame flicks, you may notice that they're not all actually one frame. A lot of the flicks are most commonly around 1 to 3 frames. For consistency's sake, let's consider a 1-frame flick to be 1 to 3 frames from point A to B in a 60 FPS video. Doing the math, the time between 2 frames in a 60 FPS video is 16 milliseconds. So with 2 to 3 frames of leeway, we have a total of 16 milliseconds to 50 milliseconds for your mouse sensor to track the pad. While this doesn't sound like a huge amount of time, this is still in the realm of human possibility. Another topic that's commonly discussed is mouse polling rate. You often come across the idea that lowering your polling rate to as low as 125 Hz can make flicks look faster or more jarring. While it's true that a lower polling rate can sometimes exaggerate that snappy frame skipping effect, it's not as big of a factor as many think. Remember, most 1-frame flicks aren't actually just 1 frame. It's more about the style and speed of the flick than the polling rate itself. Lowering your polling rate might give your flicks a more instant look on screen, but using a higher polling rate such as 1000 or even 8000 generally won't make a noticeable difference in how the flick appears on video. Ultimately, playing with a low polling rate usually isn't worth the trade-off, since it can hurt your overall smoothness and control during normal gameplay. Let's talk about sensitivity, specifically mouse accel. You've probably heard that mouse accel is a bad thing for your aim, and that you should disable enhanced point precision in Windows. But we can actually utilize a different type of mouse accel to our advantage for our flicks. It'll make your flicks really fast and snappy, but it comes with a few downsides to your aim in terms of consistency. We'll leave a few links on this topic so you can better understand how it affects your aim over the long term. In short, we can use mouse accel to gain the advantages of using both a high and low sense, where we have the control of a more normal sense for smaller and slower movements like tracking a target or just general movement. But at the same time, we have the speed of a high sense when we want to go for a 1-frame flick. Note that this step is entirely optional, but can greatly improve the snappiness of your flick. In many of the example clips we've shown, the players were using some type of mouse accel. Again, these 1-frame flicks can be done without mouse accel, but you may have to mess around with settings and sensitivities to get comfortable with these types of flicks. There's a bunch of other settings that you can mess around with which will change how your flicks look and feel. Halo Daycare has a few guides that we'll link that covers these topics, including an explanation of the tech we just covered and a raw accel guide to find the best curve for you.
Now that we understand the technique, we can head into any game and be able to instantly teleport our crosshair onto any target of our choosing, no matter where they are on the map, in a single frame. This has to be the perfect flick technique. But there's only one issue. What happens if you miss? The truth is, this style of aim is flawed. Yes, it's flashy, and people can question if you're legit, but it comes with some serious trade-offs. One mistake, one misjudged pixel, and it falls apart. Players who commit to 1-frame flicks understand the sacrifice. Less mouse control, fatigue, and a massive barrier to entry. You'll be relying almost entirely on your wrists and fingers. Arm movement, basically gone. Tracking targets, brutally difficult. Because of the charge up and lift, you're disabled both before and after the shot. The moment your mouse leaves the pad, you lose all control. No tracking, no adjustment, no bailout. You're locked into the flick no matter what. If you miss, that's it. There's no recovery. Just a frozen camera and a free kill for your opponent. It's a gamble. And unless you hit it perfectly, you're at a disadvantage. And then there's the fatigue. Not just mental, but physical. For newer players, it hits fast. The constant lifting, the repeated tension of stopping mid-flick, it can lead to wrist problems. This isn't something you can brute force for hours either. Chasing clips with this style demands stamina most people don't have.
So, should you implement this technique? If you're truly passionate about pushing a technique not many others do, and you're willing to sacrifice comfort, consistency, and even clarity, maybe. Because for a few, it's not about hitting shots, it's about chasing a style. One that looks robotic, mechanical, even inhuman. And for some, that's the appeal. There's an artistry in making your aim look unreal, not just effective, but expressive. To them, a flick isn't just a mechanic, it's a statement. A display of decision so sharp and unnatural it blurs the line between man and machine. It's not about what's practical, it's about what's possible. With all this in mind, the difficulties and the passion presented, the technicalities, I'll leave you with one last question. Which player is cheating?